this room is going to be advising about schooling after college with the Department of Political Science's own Joe Hinchliffe. So please put your hands together and welcome Joe.
I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to talk about advising about schooling after college. That's my agenda. I want to talk about some assumptions about what I think advisors can do and what they can't do. I want to talk about a definition of schooling after college, particularly graduate school, and or graduate professional school, and my thought is still in process in this. But I have a provocation for you about what graduate school is, and I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the incidence of graduate advising for people who work with undergraduates, and I want to talk about some conversations that you might have with undergraduates about, I want to go to graduate school, and you say, and then they say, well, I love studying X, Y, or Z, and it's my passion. How do you respond? What do you think about that? Or, yeah, I really like school, I want to go right after college. Let's talk about that. It'll help me get a good job. It'll pay off. Very common reason to go to graduate school. How do you respond to those? And then sort of, what do you hope to accomplish in graduate school? And that's sort of taking back to my initial theme. Now, I was going to talk about graduate applications. For some reason, I thought I had 75 minutes. I have only 45 minutes, so I cut things a little bit. So let me lay out the assumptions. Number one, students need to create the academic intensity and motivation that they need to move through graduate school. Well, we can talk, we can help them, professors can spark an interest, but ultimately, the fire has to burn in them, and it doesn't matter about the fire in us. It has to be their fire, not ours. So we can help, we can nudge, we can point out stuff, but we can't, ultimately provide that. The second thing, though, is we can probably help students shape their lives in a lot of different ways that are useful and constructive. We can't provide the sort of the fire, but maybe we can help them shape things, and with small steps. Baby steps, if you will. Right? Multiple small steps over an extended time in college. Building a relationship where you're talking about graduate school in multiple sessions, maybe over multiple semesters, much more productive. There can't be catch-up when somebody comes in, let's say in the October of their senior year and says, I want to go to graduate school. Okay, we can have a conversation. But it's going to be a less helpful and less constructive conversation than if they came in, say, their sophomore year or their junior year. So, what is graduate or professional school? Well, certainly the Christopher Columbus Langdell Hall at Harvard Law School is an important. Harvard Law School is an important graduate or professional school, but in a lot of ways, an archetypical one. Usually, we would say something like graduate school is about obtaining a degree from an accredited graduate or professional program. That's hardly a surprise. This is a little bit of a provocation. Let me break graduate school into different pieces. Let me say graduate school is not one thing. Oh, there's a place, there's a class, there's a school, there's an accredited institution. But instead, let me divide graduate school into 4 components. The components, well, you see what they are. We'll talk about each one of them. And maybe student support services. But I want to come back to that. So first of all, let's talk about it in terms of educational alternatives. I mean, graduate school, you can certainly get wonderful classes in a graduate program. And it would be perfectly fine to think about curricula and courses in evaluating graduate school. That's a wonderful thing to do. And for the 19th and the early part of the 20th century, that's a great way to think about postgraduate education. But it may not be so great now. There's professional development workshops through business or professional associations like, ILIAC, right? You can learn a lot of things in workshops, in programs, and so on. And maybe it's what you need for work, Maybe it's less general, but it's an alternative way of thinking about it. You know, you can go, you can't get credit for it, but you can sit through the lectures of a first-year business school online now for free. You can take hundreds of courses in a MOOC for free. Certainly classes at a community college or local institution. But I think what's important is conscientious personal development. That's an important educational step. And it's an important alternative to graduate school. I want to learn more about this. Okay, why don't you take some classes? Why don't you read a book? Why don't you find stuff on the internet? You know, for most of human history, the problem of libraries and education was the problem of scarcity. Some people had the information and were spreading it. Now, information comes in a fire hose. And the trouble is, how do I fill my cup? How do I get my little amount of water? And you're thinking about graduate school. Well, you know, what can you get at graduate school? One thing you get is courses. But if I get the same courses online for free, what else does graduate school offer besides classes? You know, I can read books myself. I can watch the lectures. What else does graduate school offer? Well, let's talk about some of those other things too. Feedback. Graduate school offers feedback. It offers feedback on grades. It offers feedback and comments on papers. Maybe other kinds of feedback. Now, to be honest, most of you have been to graduate school at one level or another. How much feedback do you get? How many of you were in graduate school felt, oh yes, I got all the feedback I wanted on what I was learning? Yeah. So you can get it in graduate school. It can happen. You can get some, but you can get no feedback or not enough feedback a lot of other places too. From bosses, in business or social networks, professional networks. You can get a lot of places. Not just graduate school, but if you're going to graduate school, if you're plopping down $50,000 a year, you want to get feedback for what you want to get something for what you're paying for. And the classes you get a lot of the information for free. The feedback's what you're paying for. So you want to think about, well, what feedback am I getting? How am I improving my skills? So one thing you get beyond classes is feedback. Another thing is certification. That's really important. You get a transcript and a diploma. You want to be a lawyer? You got to go to law school. You want to be a CPA? You got to do the 5 years. Well, it's 4 or 5 years, but you got to take the courses that you need to take. You want to be a licensed professional engineer? You need an engineering degree. No doubt about it. That's a really important thing, and that's something that graduate and professional schools or undergraduate schools, depending on what you want to do, have, and in other places don't. But they're not the only kind. There's a lot of things that do certification, testing. If you want to be an actuary, great if you have a degree in actuarial science, but it's about taking the several tests that that you need to take to become a fellow of the American Society of Actuaries. There's other kinds of certification in HR and other places. There's professional licensure exams, right? All these are alternatives. Graduate school is a possibility, right? But these matter. Sometimes just work experience matters more than a graduate degree, right? If you've gone and done something, that's going to carry more weight with more employers than another degree. So, think about if you're looking at a graduate program, what precisely you're getting. Well, one thing's the classes, that's good. Another thing is the feedback. Another thing is the certification. Hopefully you get some, depending on the kind of program, some experience, right? It would be good if your doctor has seen patients before you go to see them, right? You'd like to see that in a good graduate program. But that's an important quality. The other aspect, and if I had any doubts about this at all, I only had to open up Forbes magazine this morning on the internet, and what did I see? An article talking about graduate and professional school, and they said the most important thing was what? Networking. Not classes, not feedback, networking. It was the tremendous classmates that this person had in school. You think, wow. So I'm paying for this? I'm paying a lot of money for this to go to graduate school, and what I'm getting is what other students give me, not what the faculty gives me, and I'm not getting much feedback, and the certification's nice, but there's other certifications I could get instead. Wow, graduate school looks like a different deal now. Student support services. They can be efficiently delivered in a college and university, and they're very important, but they're also only an alternative. Okay, so I've talked about this alternative to graduate school. So as I talk about, thinking about going to graduate school, in the back of my mind is this question: could I get the same thing someplace else? And if I can, for less money, why don't I get the other thing and save my money? Particularly in a slow-growing economy. How common an issue is this for you? So I guess the first choice is choosing the monk. You don't want to take students down the garden path. And then the second thing, once you've selected a graduate school, is or chosen to go to graduate school, is then choosing from among alternative programs. Okay, I've talked about this sort of, let's call it my provocation about what graduate school is. Let's talk about the incidents. How much do you need to talk to students about going to graduate school? Well, 1 in 3 of the U.S. population over 25 years old, wow, it's cut off, has a bachelor's degree. What does that mean? If I look at educational attainment of adults over 25, or 25 or older, in the United States, with a bachelor's degree or higher, only 46%, less than half, have only a bachelor's degree, right? More than half have some graduate school, some postgraduate education. Wow, wow. And at a good school, I'd expect that number to be even higher. Wow, this is a big deal, right? This is over half our students. So don't go off. Oh, I don't have to worry about that. My kids aren't going to graduate school. Whatever, they're going. That's 2013. That's now. So if I think about graduate school not just as degree-granting institutions, but this broader sense of acquiring experiences after college. Now, that's such a big definition. It covers everything, right? It's probably too much. But if I mean something like deliberate educational experiences, well, that's everywhere. This is a big problem, not a small problem. So, let's anticipate some conversations here. I want to go to graduate school. And you all give a nice, non-directive response. Tell me about that. And the student blurts out something like, it's my passion. I love studying this subject. Okay. So test the love. Test the love. A lot of people, it's very popular in the media. This article in Jacobin magazine got a lot of play back in the spring. Do what you love. Don't worry about money. Don't worry about anything. Just do what you love. Wow. Wow. I think that's really bad advice. I'll get more to that later, but I don't think that's great. Going to graduate school because you love it, and this expectation that your work life is something you should love, it's your passion, and that you should have all your needs fulfilled by your job. That's really unreasonable. That makes it an impossible job to find. Maybe there are a few people with jobs like that, but mostly not. And this article makes a lovely point. It devalues work. I mean, a lot of people do jobs they don't particularly like. They do the work, and it's fine. What's the host about the most dangerous jobs? He gave a TED talk, and he said, people that he sort of looked at people that had the worst jobs, and he said, a lot of those people, he said, they're the most well-balanced people I've met. He said, because they know this work is just work, and that they have to find meaning in their life some other way. So, first thing to think about when students say, I love this subject, I am fascinated by this subject, I want to learn more about this subject, is, okay, think about those educational alternatives. So you love English, or you love political science, or you love reading about government or politics. Join a reading group. That doesn't mean you have to go to graduate school. You can read a lot of stuff and talk about it. You can take free online courses, online lectures. There's a lot of things you can do besides go to graduate school just because you love the subject. And those are good choices. As I said, 20 years ago, we had information scarcity. Now we have the problem of managing the flow. Maybe the best alternative for somebody graduating from college that doesn't know what they want to do, or thinks vaguely they want to go to graduate school but don't have particularly good reasons to do that in their assessment, or not a strong feeling, is why don't you develop a plan of self-study? Why don't you figure out, well, if you go to graduate school, what would you learn? Can you learn that on your own? Can you pick up a book and read it? We're supposed to develop focused, self-starting learners at the University of Illinois and in college, right? You wouldn't expect an engineer to say, oh, I need to design this, I need to take a class. No, you need to figure out how to do this. Figure out how to manage your own education, or encourage students to think about how to manage their own education and their own interests. So, a student says they love this subject, and they want to study it in graduate school. They want to become a professor, or they want to teach this. Okay, good. What should you ask them? What journals are you reading? Who does the best work in this field? You want to be a professor, you need to start talking like a professor. Professors talk about other authors. Who wrote this? Who wrote that? Who are you reading? Well, but I'm not in graduate school yet. You want to do this for the rest of your life. Won't you pick up a journal now and start taking a look? This is associated with PhD completion. Have you attended the annual meetings of the XYZ Association, the American Political Science Association, the American Economics Association? They even have student discounts. You can go for free. You want to be a professor? Go find out what it's like. Go, watch, participate. These are people who have strong answers on this, strongly associated with PhD completion. As I said, if they haven't done this, encourage them to do it. All PhD students, I'm assuming virtually all PhD students, they love this stuff. The field's good, it's interesting, they like it. The ones likely to complete, or two distinguishing factors of people who complete their PhD rather than just start their PhD, they read the journals, they attend annual meetings of the association as undergraduates. So, as I said, okay. An alternative, the one you got to convince the student to rule out or to ask themselves about, is this. Okay, you love the subject, but when you say you love the subject, is it that you just love the professor here? Do you just like being an undergraduate? You know, where you go drinking, and then you read it. You like the readings, they're good, they're interesting. Then you go to class and you kind of bloviate in a seminar, and then write a paper once in a while, take a midterm and final and you're done. Is that what they like? Is that what you like? Or do you like going to the library every night poring over this stuff? It's not part of the study, but my sense of many students who have gone from undergraduate to PhD, I've been doing this long enough, is those students start hanging out with graduate students. They start dressing like graduate students. They drink coffee with graduate students. They start looking like graduate students. That sort of pasty complexion, studying all night in the library, right? They look like that. That's a good sign. But if they're sort of not moving in that direction, you say, well, you love this, but in what sense? The concern is you want to rule out, is it just you love college? Or do you love the subject, right? So what passions matter for degree completion? It isn't a love of teaching. I mean, it may be people that go to get a PhD or a master's degree and say they want to teach, love teaching. But that isn't what distinguishes people who complete a PhD. What matters in the study by Levitt is the importance of the desire to do research. People who say, I want to get a PhD. I want the status and glory of being Dr. So-and-so. Those are the people that finish. Now, is this the same for people who want to go get an MBA or go to law school? I don't know. I wish I knew, but I don't know. So, I talked a little bit about follow your passion as controversial career advice. I think it's bad advice, just frankly. Let me give you a couple reasons about that. It distracts from your enjoyment for presence, right? What do freshmen do? If you think about freshmen walking around campus, what's their life like? They have all a condition called FOMO. Fear of missing out. Somebody might be having fun or doing something interesting that they don't have. And if you're searching for your passion, what you truly like, what you truly want, you're not enjoying the minute. You're not enjoying the time you're living. So that's this idea about searching for a passion follows one thing. I also think that passion follows mastery. I am persuaded. Part of you grow to love a job or you grow to love an occupation because you get good at it. You get experienced at it. Right? You don't start, well, maybe a few people do. Most people don't start out wanting to become an academic advisor. I don't know anybody in kindergarten that says, I want to be an academic advisor. Doctor, lawyer, fireman, policeman, nurse, sure. Academic advisor, not so much. Right? That's something you come to. And then if you like it, you may grow to love it. But that's really different than sort of this model. I have to find my passion and then take a job in that. Second thing, earning a living doesn't follow. Just because you love doing something doesn't mean people will pay you to do it. If you haven't read Penelope Truck, you should read Penelope Truck, at least a couple of her essays. But she has a charming example about she's a writer and she likes writing and it's a good career. But that isn't what she really likes. That's not what she's really passionate about. That's something else that she can't be paid for. And she said, but this is a career. That's not. Nobody's going to pay me for that. Talented people have multiple passions. You don't have just one thing. And as I said before, do you think one love can fulfill all of your needs? If we were talking about spouses or significant others, would you say one person, you know, what's the Tom Cruise movie? You complete me. Right? That's the movies. That is not reality. If you were miserable before you get married, you'll be miserable after. It's not going to change things. You will not find a graduate program that will finish you as a person. So, talented people have multiple passions. Pick one that will meet your other needs. And, you know, if you have other things that you need to love, that's okay. You could do more than one thing in your life. Okay. A second thing. This is a busy person. I really love school. I want to just move through. So what I'd say then is, I love school. I want to go straight through. I want to get my degree. Test their assumptions. So the first one is test the love. Now test their assumptions. The assumption is that the work stays the same, undergraduate and graduate. This is a picture of a graduate student, right? Graduate students and professional students study more than any undergraduate believes possible. They look exhausted because they are exhausted. You need to tell undergraduates, you really want that intensity. You're sort of bumping through now. Do you really want to turn up the heat? Encourage them to go talk to graduate students or professional students. Okay, some of the law students may be a little snooty about talking to undergraduates, but mostly not. Mostly, they're going to be happy they'll tell you, this is how much I study, I like it, I don't like it, this is what I like about it. They'll talk to you. People on this campus are very friendly. Take advantage of the fact we have a large graduate program. How much more do graduate students study? This is my own personal answer. This is not based on any empirical research other than, I guess, visiting with other people. So if I think about the time to study roughly the same quantity of material. Now, it's at different levels of detail and so on. That's 1 year of high school. That's 1 semester of freshman level work in college, right? If you think about it, that's how foreign languages work. We have a year of language in high school, and then that's a semester in college, right? Advanced level classes, my rule of thumb, if you just count the books and look at the articles, they move about twice as fast as that 100 introductory course, right? They move faster. The materials sort of deep, they cover it more depth, but if I look at it's about, it's about twice the work, maybe a little more. If I look at maybe some master's degree course, you might get that in a quarter of a semester, about 3 weeks. If I look at a PhD class, hey, how was the first day? Right? Jim Kuklinski's book of the, 3 books of the week club. But that's a lot more, right? If you have students that are taking 100 level classes for most of their senior year, right? Once in a while, not always, but once in a while, I see students, and I'm working on their supporting coursework. I can't find 12 hours of courses outside their major at the 200 level or higher. What have you been doing for 4 years? Well, usually 3.5 by the time I see them. I help get them on the path of truth and justice, but so if they're taking classes down here and they want to jump up to the top level, wow, that's going to be an issue. Okay, so the first assumption you need to explore with students who say, I love school, I want to stay here, is that the work stays pretty much the same. Second aspect, life stays pretty much the same. Is that right? Tactfully remind students about their life outside. They had a life before they came to college. They have a life here. It's a wonderful life, but it's life in a bubble, especially on this campus. It's life in a bubble. And there's a lot of drama in life that they're missing. Some of it good, some of it fun, some of it sad. That they have to put on hold. You go to graduate school? Yeah, that's on hold another several years. Only some things you can't hold back anymore. Parents will continue to grow older. People fall in love, they get married, they have kids, they have life. And that's not going to change. About a quarter, let's say a fifth to a quarter of PhD students report not completing their doctorate for personal problems. The drama of life. So, one thing you want to say to students is, get your life in shape. Another assumption students will make about graduate school is this. I can do the work. I can go to graduate school and succeed. I can do this, right? Now, the first is sort of your motivation, your intensity. The second is I can do the work. Well, question you need to think about if you're talking to the student is, has the student sufficient academic skills to do the work in graduate school? Allison's not here. Allison Champion, talking about math proficiency, math placement tests, has a lovely expression. People will go to the 70th percentile for Calc 1, right? And they'll say, oh, see, I place in, I can take it. And then Allison has a lovely point. You are at the lowest level of sufficient proficiency for this course. Everybody else in the class will have a higher score and be stronger in this than you are now. Are you sure you want to take it? Wow. Now, graduate programs, they may say you have to have a minimum of 1 semester of calculus. Now, for some, that may be just fine. Other graduate, you have to have a minimum of 1 semester of calculus to go into a particular economics program. Really? Only 1 semester of calculus for graduate economics? Wow, that's going to change, right? You're going to have an opportunity to grow those skills. You want to make sure students are not just adequately prepared. You want your students, the ones we're sending to grad, to be well prepared. And you need to tell them, I want you to be well prepared. And the fact that somebody gets into graduate school isn't always an indication that they're ready for graduate school, right? Cash-strapped graduate programs, oh yeah, we'll take everybody, right? You notice the qualifications of law school candidates goes up and down depending on what the population of students taking the LSAT and what the grades are, right? That shifts a lot from year to year in school, well, school to school, that's fine, it's a switch. But even with the same school, it switches from year to year because it's market-driven, it's not proficiency-driven, right? So you got to ask, wow, are these students well enough prepared? And you got to say, hey, if you're not that well prepared, think that through. Again, this is from the Levitt study, about 25% of students report they left the program because of academic failure. Now, professors will give much higher numbers than that, but 21, 28, let's say a quarter. That's a lot. That's a lot of broken lives, wasted time. Encourage students to seek out this information and maybe start communicating like adults, not children with the telephone there, right? Use of pre-attendance sources of information likely to increase PhD completion. Well, they review the material. This is an old study. Levitt is an old study. Review the material on a program. Yeah, you should do that. You think students should look at those requirements carefully. Yeah, but they don't. Another good one. You want to find out, what's this program like? Who do you want to work with at that school? Why don't you read their papers? Why don't you look at their books? But that's a lot of work. I'm not interested. Wait a minute. You want to spend 2 years studying this stuff, and you're telling me you're not interested enough to go look up a book? Go look it up. The other thing, and this was a surprise for me, go visit the graduate program. That makes a big difference in completion. I don't think it's the visit itself that matters. I think it's the dialogue, the discussion that happens. And it's perfectly proper to encourage a student, you're interested in that graduate program, why don't you go visit it? Why don't you talk to a couple other folks in another couple? And if you can't visit, at least talk to people on the phone about it. I think you should encourage students. You should pour gasoline on the fire. They want to go to graduate school. You tell them, why don't you call the director of graduate studies? And since I work with undergraduates, although there are graduate students in my department, I'll say this. Put their feet to the fire. Tell them to put their feet to the fire. They don't know. They're used to being deferential to professors. No, you're a consumer. You're a student. But you're partly a consumer. You ask. You ask them for information about the program. Well, like what? How is the teaching done? Is it case study? Do you learn from case studies? Have you had a class with a case study before? Is it lecture? Is it online? Right? It makes a difference. Some people love case studies. Some people love lectures. Some people want traditional sort of classroom instruction, seminars, lectures. Some people want group projects. How is this program taught? Go ask. It's perfectly fine, and the director of graduate studies or the professors there should tell you. Next thing. Which faculty with what levels of expertise are actively teaching? So, university has renowned professors. Are they the ones you're going to be taking classes from? Because if they're not, what do you care? What do you care? Right? Ask. Ask. If you're in a professional program, you may not want the most renowned professors, at least all the time. You may want some practitioners, people who are working, if you're thinking of studying social work, I think you might want to talk to somebody who actively sees clients, right? So you want a couple sort of real sort of solid, if you will, name professors, but you probably want some people that are working sort of on the street talking to people. Both matter, both have value, but you want to do that. You want to get a quick read on a graduate program, ask about your recent hires. Ask the BGS, what are the interests and quality of the recent hires? Well, the quality would be good, but you can certainly ask about the interests. You want to know about extracurricular activities? What do the other graduate students do? what kind of extracurricular activities would be reasonable in graduate school? How about something like a journal club? Is there a nonprofit clinic? So law schools often have clinics, or medical schools might have clinics, a journal club, a professional branch of a professional association. All those things, ask about them. If you don't ask, you won't know. And those can enrich your graduate school opportunity. Ask the student. So, you've got to meet with a prospective advisor as a student. Have you met, you got to write a thesis or a dissertation, you got to work with somebody. So, one reason to go to the conference, go meet this person. Go meet them when you're not a needy student. Go meet them as just some interested. Go watch them present a paper. Go watch their colleagues twist their tail at a panel, right? The famous, in the Midwest Political Science Association, they call it the Midwestern haircut. Sometimes it's down to here. But you want to meet those people. You want to see, what are they like? What are they like as a colleague? What are they like at a professional conference or elsewhere? U of I faculty members, this is one area where faculty are actually the best advisors, right? You want to find out who's doing interesting work in this subject or that subject. Professors really do know that. I mean, they're all over that. You got to nudge the student. Well, you're interested in studying international relations in political science. You talk to Professor Vasquez. Really, he's like a world famous expert. Why not? In fact, if I'm reading a graduate school application from another school, I want to say, well, what does Vasquez say about it? Right? And if it's missing, why doesn't he take a class with John? Right? That would be an important question. Next thing. When you've met the advisor, what are your feelings about this person? About the kind of work they do? Is this work that you want to do? If it's not, why are we here? Right? If it is, well, that's interesting. How does their mind work? In the same way? In ways that will challenge you? In ways that will upset you? Is it incomprehensible? If it's any of those, you might not want to work with them, right? So why would you go to graduate school there? If you don't feel sort of any rapport with them, if you don't get a sense that they're going to be generous with their comments, generous with their feedback, that you can work with them, why? Why are you going? Ask about completion rates. Ask about placements, right? It should be easy for you to find. And if it's not, why not? Talk to the director of graduate studies. It's their job to know. If they don't know, it's not important. They don't care. No reasons to go there. Talk to other students to learn about your advisors. As I said, when students don't complete, faculty and students blame each other. That's the punchline. I'm running out of time a little bit. So, the quality of feedback should be better in graduate school. We can talk about that. Okay, third reason. Student says, I'll get a better job. Okay, what do you hope to get out of graduate school? How am I doing on time?
6 minutes.
All right. A career. That would be a great answer. The best answers, the best reasons there are going to center on graduate school. Call out to the Career Center. It turns out they know stuff about careers. So refer them to the Career Center. But the student's understanding of a career narrative may be very outdated. And I'm going to go through this quickly. But I guess traditionally people saw completion of education, moving away from home, getting married, establishing a family, and getting a job, all in a short frame of each other. Yeah, that hadn't been true for a long time. That's just not correct. Adulthood has radically changed. Formal education takes longer to complete, especially if you're going off to graduate school for different reasons. A poor economy, broken families, and helicopter parents lead to a changed family life. The sexual revolution, cohabitation, and so on, let's say it changed marital life. If everything else is changing, why would you expect careers to be the same? So that's the first thing. Graduate school is not a place to go to get your life in order, to find a job. It's a terrible choice. Of all the places to go find yourself, graduate school is the worst you could imagine, right? People are dumping on you all day long. You need to know this, you need to read that. If you don't know what you want, if you find it, it will be sheer luck. You need to know what you want out of graduate school before you go. It won't help, it may hinder, right? The student support for graduate students is really different than for undergraduates. Oh, formally it may be the same, but you don't have time to do anything except study it. How well will the program meet your career needs? Well, first of all, ask this. Is there any evidence that this graduate school will enhance your career prospects? Do people in the business actually all have to go to graduate school, or can they get jobs through a variety of other paths? Look at placement. How many students are placed into suitable positions at what salary, with what locations, and how prestigious an employer? What's their career path, right? Ask. You need to encourage the students. Ask. Ask for this information. If they don't put it on the website, ask for it, right? You're doing this as a job placement decision. You're going to invest, what? $50,000, $100,000 going to graduate school. You better know what you're getting. It's partly career certification. Think about your classmates, right? The article I saw this morning said that's the most important thing. You want to fit in, but you want classmates that will stretch you. You want to evaluate brand. Is this school what you wanted? Different schools have different, quite aside from the question of excellence or not, certain programs, certain kinds of schools have certain distinguishing characteristics, right? Rochester political science is different than Stony Brook political science. Not just for the excellence of the program, but for the emphasis, how they approach things, how they talk about things, how they study things. We can talk about differences in economics or other kinds of programs. Departmental prestige offers some protections for students, but reminds students there are some cautions, right? Historical data isn't, an assurance of future results. Ask about attrition. Ask students to ask how many students who start the program complete the program. And if people are dropping out, why are they dropping out? I don't know. Did you ask? Help students get a good deal here. Ask about financial support. Remember, there's a lot of career opportunity outside the educational, certification and network certainly, and financing, or as we call it, job. But the financial plan for going to graduate school has to work. It has to work in two ways. The short-term plan has to work in terms of tuition, right? Graduate school, particularly professional school, it's going to be more expensive than undergraduate. You have to buy more books, you have to spend more time on your studies, so you have less time for research. You have to finance your own projects. You may have to finance living expenses. You may have some opportunities for tuition assistance, fee waivers, and so on, but you still need to get that thing to work. About 1 in 5 graduate student, PhD students says they leave their program for financial reasons. And I think that all these reasons, the financial and the academic and the social, may be bundled together in different ways, but at least that's noteworthy. And the long-term financial plan has to work. So students are always saying, if I go to graduate school, I'm going to get a higher salary. Great. I'm going to have greater employability. Great. I'm going to find myself. Marvelous. But you got a debt that you didn't have before. $50,000, $100,000. You got to count that against those increased higher salary and so on. You need to think about opportunity costs. What could you be doing instead of going to graduate school? Oh, networking. Oh, traveling the world. You could do all kinds of things. You need to think about that. And so the balance can shift, but also think of graduate school not only as immediately after college, but also think about it as part of a sequence. Maybe I'll work and I'll intern for somebody, then I'll get a job, and then another job, and then I'll go to graduate school. And maybe I can get my employer to pay for it. That's a much better deal, right? There's not just a single path. Oh, 2 more slides. So, unless students do the research, they're just gambling, right? And so good reasons to go, certification, likely improvement, and so on. So those are just key points. If you have any questions, yeah, life is not always good for college graduates. There's some traps waiting for them. If you have any questions,
Probably have time for like one question. Does anybody have a question they want to ask? All right. Oh, yeah.
So I've heard you mention in other sessions about getting the students to start developing a plan like the second semester they're on campus as a freshman. Are there ways that you implement this, maybe not these exact slides, but this kind of discussion to a larger form of students rather than just one at a time?
Yeah, I teach a class called Civic Careers, and we spent, not a lot of time, but I spend one class talking about evaluating educational opportunities. Some, but not all the slides from there came here. And what we talk about sort of what a career looks like. We talk about how do you think about graduate school. We talk about how do you plan an application to graduate school, right? If I had 75 minutes, I'd probably talk about that part, but sort of how do you lay out those steps? Yeah, you got the tests, you got the exams, but sort of you need to work on these other areas too. So, part of it. Anything else?
Unfortunately, I think we are just about